Today we're going to be reading from the introduction from my book, The Lockdown on Self-Love, How to Make Suffering Work for You. Blah, 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 blah. But before we make a start, let's check if the mic is working, shall we? Mic check 1, 2. I think so. Introduction. It is fair to say that certain events led me to write this book. In part, it was my obsession with trying to understand the workings of my own mind and my emotions. But it was also my desire to open up, rather than do the easier thing, which would be to make like ostrich and bury my head in the sand, like so many of us do. Not long ago, before I started writing this book, I went through a traumatic experience, which resulted in me losing everything. I saw my world crumbling around me, and I came to realize that I was living with a victim mentality. At the height of it all, I felt miserable, I pitied myself, and I was constantly depressed. I projected that onto all who loved me, feeling like I wasn't good enough and that everyone was against me. I had no friends of my own and had a very little understanding of how to move forward. I lived in a vicious circle that I blamed on circumstances. I was an emotional mess and I was angry at the world. I felt like there was no compromise with anything in life and I could see no light at the end of the tunnel. I felt as if my cards had been dealt and this was my fate. But I hadn't addressed my own behaviour up until that point, including my coping mechanisms for how I dealt with my anxiety, for example, or how I conducted myself in confrontational situations. I didn't take responsibility for my sex addiction or using Class A drugs either, which I regularly indulged in, using the excuse that I had nothing better to do. In fact, it was something that I unfortunately looked forward to all too much. These behaviours were my coping mechanisms, and all they did was mask the pain that I was living with for so many years, hide my depression, and mean I had nothing else to look forward to. At least, that's what I led myself to believe. Recently, I went through a breakup. We have a child together, and as you might imagine, I was going through a rough patch with a lot of emotions to deal with. One afternoon, after spending most of my time in the lounge with my head buried between my legs, crying, I had this realization that with every breath in my lungs, I had to get to the bottom of this. I recognized that the relationship I had with myself was fragile and that I needed to work on it. I spoke to myself, perhaps for the first time, and made up my mind right then, to improve. I asked myself, how can I make that happen? I found myself down the path of self-development and personal growth, and from that day on, my life started to improve, as did the relationships I had with others. Most importantly, my relationship with life took a turn for the better. It was as if I was reborn. By that, what I mean to say is, I looked at my hands, as if for the first time, and felt the O of what it means to be alive. One thing led to another, and I ended up having a few experiences that showed me who I truly was. An infinite being having a human experience, and with that, I found spirituality. I had smoked dimethyltryptamine, which I will go into later, and that helped me shape my perception of my life. I began to understand that, whilst things might be out of my control, I could at least manage myself better, take it easy, and for the best part, not be so hard on myself. I learned how to get a handle on my anxiety, and I came to believe in something far greater than myself. It gave me a great deal of strength to know that I wasn't alone and that I was divinely supported. There were still many days that I would feel disheartened, wondering when all the suffering would end. It took a great deal of effort to recommit every day to bettering myself, choosing to believe that I had a choice, that the responsibility was all mine, that I could be a better version of me today than who I had been the day before. And eventually, little by little, my ambition grew. And now, here I stand. Admittedly, choosing to write is also my own way of making peace with what once consumed me. The lockdown in 2020 caused me to do a lot of reflecting. I wondered to myself, for the first time, what is it that I have to contribute to the world? What is it that I have to offer? I knew many men in my situation had taken their own lives after splitting up with their baby mamas. So many others also suffered, in one way or another, where they also felt like they saw no other way out. I used to feel so much shame. I felt like I was only existing. I could relate to those that had chosen to take their own lives. The day I lost everything, when my world crumbled around me, the easiest thing I could have done would have been to also take my own life. I felt uncomfortable in my own skin, and I had a hyperactive insecurity, feeling as if everyone knew about my dark secrets. This fired up a calling within me to allow my vulnerability and transparency to set the tone for the unapologetic truth. We do what we do, for we know no better at the time. It is also my wish that I inspire another fellow human being and raise awareness about one of the most unhealthy coping mechanisms that I personally lived through, not addressing the elephant in the room, having the courage and the willingness to open up without sugarcoating anything in full expression, to discuss without arguing, and to hold space for one another gracefully is the biggest lesson I have learnt from this journey. In all honesty, now I think of the word argument and wonder, what is even the point? If I had one wish, I would request that humanity had an interest in having a healthy debate. From there, we would all find middle ground and compromise. I see so much value in that, in love, in full support, in an open mind and heart. So to start you on this journey, I would like to ask you the same question I asked myself in that time of life. What is life all about, if not for the experience? I mean, look at chocolate ice cream, for example, or your favorite flavor of choice. If it wasn't for the ability, the pleasure, the feeling of how it stimulates your buds, if not for that, what would even be the point? I believe our lives are about growth and evolution of our soul through experience with all the contrasts of life. We wouldn't otherwise have any need to navigate it. If life were plain sailing, we would all be lost at sea. Having said that, I firmly believe that those who do find themselves lost, as I once did, myself for many years, have simply lost a spark within themselves. Perhaps like me, they might be ungrateful and have a victim frame of mind. I remember once being called ignorant about this and took that to heart. I felt as though my intelligence was being questioned and found it patronizing, to say the least. But here is what I learned. Ignorance is the expression to say that one does not know. My ignorance was my lack of understanding as to what the term victim meant and what it meant to live with a victim frame of mind. Before I understood it, I would have most likely have taken offense at being called a victim and gone on the defensive, unaware that my very reaction proved the point. I was oblivious to the fact that I had fallen victim to the circumstances happening to me and took very little control on how I chose to engage. Instead, I chose to react. Once I understood the victim mindset, though, I was able to respond rather than react to life. If someone said that to me now, I'd be more inclined to say, you have an interesting point of view. I would love for you to share your thoughts with me. I would like to understand. Don't make allowances for letting life happen to you rather than being the reason that life happens. I also recall being called selfish far too many times in the past. I used to find guilt in that. For my selfishness, I was made to feel shame. I wonder how many of us point the finger to say to another, all you care about is yourself. Looking back now, how ridiculous that statement sounds. I didn't care about myself at all at the time. I came to learn that the hard way, and at great cost for me, for many years suffering from depression, when the reality of the fact was obvious. Of course I deserved to care about myself. It's a different attitude, the attitude of, where in love if not from within? If you come to think about it, your ability to feel any emotion in the first place comes from inside of you. We're led to believe that it's the responsibility of whatever is outside of you that triggers our response, but that is far from the truth. You get to choose how you feel instead, and I imagine, all too well, as I feel the same, that we all want to be happy and feel loved. So why not offer that to yourself? The responsibility towards oneself is to offer your own self-support, to be your own best friend, to be your own cheerleader, to be the one that you can count on, no matter what. Have your own back. From there, not only do you benefit from showing up to yourself, but the rest of the world does also, when the best of you gives back what you've got to give to the world. If only we all had this attitude, how much better the world would be. In my quest to understand, control, and make peace with myself and all the choices I've made thus far, I wrote this book. And what I've come to learn is that all experiences, however you label them, are worth sharing. But that's what it's all about, the abundance of contrast. After all, that's what makes up life. Before we continue into my world and my discovery on self-love, I would like you to consider this exercise. Imagine what the experience would be like for you if another version of yourself materialized before your own eyes and asked you these questions. How is it that I can love you better? How can I make you feel supported? How is it I can be of service to you? What areas of your life would you like to improve? And is there anything that I can do to help? For me, I heavily depended on this from others. Never had it cross my mind that I should have been offering it to myself all this time. That's the end of the introduction of the lockdown of self-love. How to make suffering work for you. For the next episode, I'll read Chapter 1, Hiding the Inner Child. Feel free to comment if anything's come up for you. Feel free to describe as well. So stay tuned for the next episode. Take care. Till the next one. Bye for now.